Logos. Almost every single product that exists today has some kind of identification, whether it's a logo, brand name, or label. Once you put your foot out the door, you will 100% be bombarded by logos and even find them in places you'd never even thought of. Many fashion brand logos have really interesting stories behind them and are the result of careful thought and design. On the other hand, some logos seem like the product of minimal effort and a few are just straight up bad. A great logo does its job well when it's easily recognizable and visually appealing. Honestly, sometimes doing the opposite of this can also lead to some really interesting designs. Designing a logo is straight up an art form in itself. How do you capture the essence of a brand in a single image? A logo is often the first thing people notice and the one detail they remember, so getting it right means creating a symbol that captures your identity at a glance. When I was looking at blogs and publications talking about fashion brand logos, it actually made me sad. One blog claimed to list the top 40 most iconic fashion logos. We've got Oscar de la Renta at number 1.
Okay.
Let's look at what number 40 is. That tells you everything you need to know. And Carhartt, one of the most iconic logos, was nowhere to be found on this list. Safe to say whoever put this list together.
And how do you react to that?
Hold up. He's an idiot.
But you know what? You may agree with that list, because honestly what resonates with one person might not with another. Fashion brand logos as we recognize them today gained prominence in the late 19th century and very early 20th century, coinciding with the rise of designer labels and mass production. While some brands had logos before, such as Levi's with their 2 horses patch since the 1880s, the widespread adoption of recognizable logos on clothing really took off with the growth of the fashion industry and desire to visually identify and promote brands. In 1896, Louis Vuitton's son, George, created the famous LV monogram to combat counterfeiting and establish a strong sense of visual identity for the brand. From there, it just spiraled. In the later half of the 20th century, particularly in the 1980s and beyond, logos became increasingly important as status symbols, with brands like Gucci and countless others gaining prominence by constantly displaying their logos on clothing. In the world of branding, typography is the art and technique of arranging type to convey a brand's message clearly. It involves choosing the right typefaces, font sizes, and spacing to ensure the text is both visually appealing and easy to read. On the other hand, calligraphy brings a handcrafted artistic touch where each letter is carefully crafted with some type of flair or an intricate detail that adds personality. Typography-driven logos like Uniqlo uses bold, blocky lettering, super legible and very distinctive. Blended typography and calligraphy logos like YSL, where the full name uses classic typography while the stacked YSL monogram has a hand-composed artistic quality. Sometimes the logo literally comes from the texture of the pieces.
L'intrecciato è una straordinaria forma d'arte. Diventa quasi il foglio bianco su cui fare lavorazioni diverse, alternare colori, tipologie, misure e tecniche costruttive.
Bottega's actual wordmark is about as basic as it gets, plain straightforward typography, but you can immediately recognize the brand without ever seeing the name. The woven leather, that signature intrecciato weave, is basically their real logo. Intrecciato refers to Bottega's distinctive leather weaving technique developed to adapt leather for fabric-based sewing machines by interlacing thin leather strips to create a seamless reinforced texture. The process increases flexibility and durability while maintaining a refined minimalist look, and over time this technique evolved beyond functionality, becoming a signature part of the brand. And we're seeing more of that approach today. A lot of newer brands don't even care about having a flashy logo. Man, just let the clothes themselves do the talking. Take Sage Nation or JLAL for example. Their logos are about as normal as it gets. Simple type, nothing fancy, but the actual work?
Goat! Raw! Fire!
The fabrics, the silhouettes, the construction, that's what sets them apart. It's kind of the opposite of the logo-heavy flex culture that dominated the 2000s and 2010s. These brands are betting that if the design is strong enough, people will recognize it without needing a giant emblem stamped on the chest of a garment. The logo becomes secondary, almost invisible. Obviously, this doesn't apply to all the newer brands. For example, I really appreciate the little Tokyo table tennis logo and all the different variations and colors associated with their caps that have been released throughout these past few years. Or take, for example, Ordinary Practices logo and how it actually coincides with the vented quarter-zip piece they dropped. There's really levels to this because some logos resonate with people in ways I don't personally understand. Let's take Chrome Hearts. Their logo is this bold, gothic-inspired cross paired with Old English lettering, and people love it so much that they'll actually tattoo it on their bodies. Honestly, it might be one of the most popular fashion logos within the tattoo community specifically. But back to where calligraphy meets illustration, I think this t-shirt and the recent ones from Euromon is a great example of where calligraphy and illustration can become so intertwined that it borderline becomes a new type of visual style. The style of logo is like closer to like personal sketches or I don't know, freehand drawing than they are of like a Gucci logo. Does that mean the Gucci logo is bad? Hell no. But there is one logo out there that has reigned supreme for almost an entire decade.
White tee. Supreme.
If we're talking most recognizable and culturally relevant logos, we gotta have Supreme at the number 2 spot. The number 1 spot will be discussed later in the video. Supreme built its brand around a bold graphic identity directly inspired by the subversive artwork of Barbara Kruger. Supreme's first store opened in 1994 in New York, quickly becoming a destination for skateboarders and tastemakers. In the years since, the brand's influence in its global storefronts have only grown. When your product is being sold out in mere seconds purely because of a logo, that's when you know you got it. They pretty much mastered scarcity. Limited drops, long lines, and instant sellouts made every product feel grand. The fear of missing out became their most powerful marketing tool. Their brand spread through underground culture, word of mouth, and pure hype. Building on the hype is the Supreme photo tees. In 2005, Supreme released their first photo tee with Wu-Tang member Raekwon. Since then, the Supreme photo tee is a staple piece in streetwear history. Famous collaborations with iconic figures like Mike Tyson, Kermit, Kate Moss, 3 6 Mafia, and many more have contributed to the cultural significance of these pieces. With how successful the Supreme logo was, it also brought an abundant amount of hate with it. Did you know that when former NBA player J.R. Smith revealed his Supreme tattoo on Instagram, the league quickly informed him that he'd be fined for every game he played unless he kept it covered? Apparently, NBA rules prohibit players from displaying any commercial logos or corporate insignia on their body or in their hair. Also, the amount of flexing during that time was just insane. Celebs, consumers, influencers. Fast forward years now, it's much more subtle but still alive and well.
Acne Studios or Comme des Garçons. Acne.
12 seconds later.
Acne Studios or ALD. Acne. Acne Studios or Balenciaga. Acne. Acne Studios or Bottega. Acne. Acne Studios or Our Legacy. Our Legacy.
First of all, Acne over Comb is crazy, but I will say I understand the appeal of Acne. As we were just talking about Supreme and how logos were so heavily dominant during that time, Acne from around 2016 to 2020, those were the years where the brand truly felt like it stood for something distinct. Logo designs definitely changed over time from more figurative marks to minimalist and streamlined designs, often reflecting broader trends in design. There was this quiet confidence to their collections, clean lines, subtle unconventional cuts, beautiful color palettes, and a kind of refined minimalism. At a lot of points during that time, the brand wasn't necessarily screaming for attention like these other logo-centric labels, and that's exactly why it stood out and resonated with a certain type of audience. But one thing I will never understand is how this shirt got so popular. There is no character to this shirt. At least Supreme had a goddamn red box, man. All these shirts go for $400 to $500. If you give me $500 right now, I can make a whole wardrobe from scratch. But you know what? This is good for brands like Acne and brands like Supreme. They're able to make plenty of profit from these logos and then put that money back into making really cool pieces, so it's kind of a win for everyone, I guess. You know that number 1 spot I was talking about earlier? Yeah, the most iconic logo, in my opinion, is the New York Yankees.
The throw by Sanders. Play at the plate, Yankees win. They lead the series.
Look at my eyes.
In this borough, legacies get built.
The interlocking NY logo of the New York Yankees has a history that dates back to 1877, predating the team's existence. It was originally designed by Louis Tiffany of Tiffany & Co. for a NYPD Medal of Valor awarded to officers for bravery. The New York Highlanders, who later became the Yankees, adopted the logo in the early 1900s. It is one of the most recognizable sports logos in the world. People who don't even watch baseball or know the team still wear the cap. Unlike many team logos that stay within sports culture, the Yankees logo has crossed into music, fashion, film, and even politics.
You now know who I am. I am a Yankee.
In the 90s and 2000s, the Yankees logo became a hip-hop staple. Artists like Jay-Z made it part of their persona. Now it's worth mentioning people have used it to build their own brands and make a living, even outside of sports, without the right to do so. The logo has become so recognizable that it's been absorbed, flipped, and repurposed time and time again. I'll give you 2 examples. Number 1, Old Man Allen. I think he owned a bunch of popular pages on IG in the past. The only ones I can remember are What You Wearing and See Reverse for Care. Apparently now they are sold to someone else, but during those days he would always be selling parody products of popular sports teams and certain brands. This has continued up until 2025. When I was looking into him, I never realized that many people were actually being scammed by him, from terrible customer service to deleting alleged scam comments and flat out not shipping at all. Just a couple of months ago, this is what he announced. We have to retire the MLB style logos from our shop. We got that official letter from MLB asking us to stop selling anything that resembles their trademarks. So yeah, those hats gone. But we're not mad, just more motivated. The good news, we're cooking up new heat, original design, same energy, plus even better. New styles are loading, original, bold, innovative, and groundbreaking pieces are coming soon. This is actually sad, because even after that letter, he is still stretching out his run with playing with other people's logos, literally. It also doesn't help that in between each of his posts, he's talking about creating art and all these abstract quotes when all his products are art that is stolen. Hey MLB, go ahead and throw your final pitch, man. He's still playing with your guys' name. The second example is Memory Lane Park, now known as Casa de Lipa. Very weird change to me because I could barely find their IG for this video. Originally showcasing the embroidered NY hoodie and going viral brought a lot of attention to the brand. Unlike other brands that milk the logo, once they had a successful piece, they eventually did decide to work on creating other types of garments, which was smart on their part for longevity. The exploitation of the New York Yankees logo is just one part of the cake. There are countless other cases where people spotted a gap in the market and jumped in to capitalize on it.
I don't like the idea of being a celebrity. Anonymity is very important to me, and it balances me that I am like everybody else. I always wanted to have my name linked to the product I created, not to the face I have.
Let's give a standing ovation to Margiela, please. The presentation, the history, the mystery, and the lack of a traditional logo.
First, the logo was completely white, fixed by 4 stitches at the corners, to be easily unpicked, thus rendering the item unidentifiable.
The Maison Margiela numbered label system was introduced in 1997, the same year as the launch of the diffusion line, Line 6, which is now known as MM6. The numbers 0 to 23 identify the various product lines and categories offered from the house. Line 0 is artisanal garments for women, which are built by hand of upcycled materials. Line 010 is artisanal garments for men. Line 1 is Margiela's ready-to-wear collection of women's wear, and its male counterpart is Line 10. Margiela fragrances are Line 3. Line 4 is women's wear basics. Line 14 is menswear basics. Line 8 is eyewear. Line 11 is accessories for men and women. Line 12 is jewelry. Line 13 is non-clothing items. Line 22 is Margiela's footwear. Recently, the brand has officially launched Line 2, a new line for artistic and cultural projects. This new line is not for tangible products like clothing or accessories, but rather for what the brand refers to as intangible products or cultural and artistic collaborations. In 1992, Martin Margiela told Depeche Mode magazine, "My clothes appeal to women of a certain mindset rather than of a specific age or physique."
How are you just so consistent, like the tide, night in and night out?
My whole life is consistent. Everything I do.
Here we go.
Found was a social bookmarking website that allowed registered users to share already existing images on the internet and to receive personalized recommendations of other images. Then comes Justin Saunders, who launched a simple website filled only with images called JJJJound. You removed all text from the site, making it into a wordless stream of images. This format predated similar layouts that would later become common on platforms like Tumblr. His mood board being mostly minimalist was perfect once again, hitting an audience that were tired of the constant logo-centric designs. Eventually he would head into the Bin Trill era. Bin Trill was a group of young influential people creating their own DJ group. It included Virgil Abloh, Heron Preston, and Matthew Williams. Essentially at some point, the DJing group quickly moved to low-quality merchandise that blew up fast with various cosigns. After the group ended and all members heading into different directions, Justin continued to grow his mood board, which led him to make more meaningful connections with one of the most notable ones being Kanye. Quietly working on the label, JJJJound found enormous success. JJJJound's notable work comes from their collaborations, including collabs with brands like Solomon, Bape, Vans, Reebok, APC, Eddie Bauer, Doc Martens, Crocs, and New Balance. But what once was considered minimalism at some point for the brand's identity turned into minimal effort. There was one collaboration in particular that honestly left me so disappointed with what I was saying, but we'll get to that shortly, don't worry. But not just that collaboration, it's all of them at this point. Standalone products strictly only being JJJJound, quote-unquote designed, provide insane pricing for something that can be bought half the price or less secondhand or even thrifted. Playing into its minimalist identity, JJJJound built a highly profitable model by doing the bare minimum, spotting trending products, reworking them slightly, and releasing them under its label. Once the brand hooked its audience, it became easy to avoid evolving, stick to the formula, and brush off any criticism that shows up in the comments. Now all this lazy clothing catalog is traced back straight to the mood board he built. People talking about muted tones this, incredible curation that, but what does that even mean? Even looking at his old posts on the JJJJound IG, it can be summed up into one word many used to describe the brand: boring. If posting an empty cup of coffee sideways on a plate reading the words JJJJound, pictures of sunsets is your cup of tea for peak mood board curation, JJJJound is perfect for you. You found it. Now others have said that clothing being minimalist is fine if the products they are producing are quality. And to that, I say no. Obviously, the brand is better quality than fast fashion labels. I mean, bro, they make their stuff in Japan. Wow. And Portugal.
Wow. De 45 años has podido trabajar un año.
7 años. 7, por ahí ya no más. Hasta hoy.
De 45 años, 7 años.
7.
Pero con descansos.
Yo lo primero que entraba a donde me colocaba pedía el día de descanso ya. Y me dice algo, yo, ha entrado usted y ya está pidiendo el día de descanso.
¿Sí? ¿Y cuál es el trabajo más duro que has hecho?
Más duro, en la playa. Trabajar en la playa. Que desde por la mañana hasta por la noche.
¿Recogías arena?
Arena no, fregaba más que un loco. Y lo que me pasó, que no te lo he contado yo a ti.
De pinche de...
pinche de cocina. Lo que me mandaba el cocinero. Limpiar la lechuga, hacer el aliño, limpiar pescado. Y lo que me pasó con el cocinero que me echaron. Todo. Y me dio el cocinero 20 paelleras. ¿Sabes cómo estaban las paelleras mojosas, perdidas? Allá para abrir el restaurante que era el arroz. Y me llama el cocinero. Risita, ¿qué? Ve por la paellera. Venga, que las 2 de la tarde ya están aquí. Miren, bañador. En las chanclas. Todo despeinado porque no me dio tiempo nada ponerme las chanclas y el bañador. Voy a la playa, había subido la marea. ¿Y tú? ¿Tú? Había subido la marea y encontré una paella. Y la encontré porque estaba la paellera agarrada, metida entre las piedras de Chipiona, del faro. Y cuando entro en el restaurante me ve el cocinero con una paellera y a ver la vez de paellera.
All jokes aside, if you want minimalism to work at its peak potential, the fabric has to be really good, or the overall construction is S tier. Take South Korean brands like 7440.37.1 and Doji. Unreal, just look at their pieces. Some of them are obviously not minimal, but the ones that are, beautiful. Now how can I say that JJJJound's pieces aren't superior quality without owning any? This is where we need to find someone that is a JJJJound fanatic and explain what makes these pieces so special. And this video by Bobby Green here is perfect for explaining the JJJJound dilemma. Let's see what he has to say.
Now, upon first look, you just see a mood board or a website selling sort of high-priced clothing that looks particularly plain, and it honestly, other than looking sort of nice, doesn't really say, hey, buy me. It's very minimal branding. The whole brand itself is minimalism, which people often mistake for boring or lack of design. That's probably because minimalism at its core doesn't really need logos, doesn't really need crazy color palettes, doesn't really boast like camos or anything like that. Instead, it's just kind of like the fundamentals. Like, what makes JJJJound so good at marketing essentially plain logoless apparel?
$100 for a baseball cap with the JJJJound logo. $255 for candles with the JJJJound logo. Every single shoe collab, the JJJJound logo is present. It's crazy how a brand that embodies minimalism relies so heavily on a logo. Alright, let's get to the most important segment.
While they're focusing on quality materials, to a degree at least, they're no Gucci or Balenciaga, but I'd say the material on their products are pretty good, especially when they're collabing with another well-known brand like New Balance or something like that. But with their own products, they just kind of focus on like construction as far as like sweaters, hoodies, or whatever. This is just a black crew neck, and for all intents and purposes, it's a very regular fit. Now, how much do they cost? It costs like $175 shipped, and I would say that upon first impression, when I opened it out of the package, I was like, this was not worth it. All for this little cream colored tag on the side that says JJJJound that no one's gonna see. But the more I wore it, I sort of kind of understood what they were doing. I'm one of those people that I've been into fashion long enough to know that out of the box, our first impressions aren't always as valuable as people make them out to be. Another thing that JJJJound does well is sort of follow that 3% rule that Virgil Abloh talked about.
Virgil Abloh's 3% rule is a design philosophy proposing that a minor alteration or just 3% to an existing idea or design can create something entirely new and culturally significant. I just want to preface this by saying that many people frame this rule into saying that like anything that Virgil did, he just changed everything by 3%. This is so backwards because condensing all of his work to this idea is straight up stupid. His shows were so goddamn detailed, like hundreds and hundreds of pages of notes. For him, the notes were very, very integral and a part of his art. He wanted the audience to understand not only what they were seeing on the runway, but why. The notes would dive into music, architecture, subcultures, even social issues, tying them back to the garments you were seeing. The amount of inspiration he took and put that straight into each one of his looks was beautiful to see. So just so we're all on the same page, the whole 3% rule didn't apply to anything Virgil did on the runway. But I am very curious and need to see what he says about the JJJJound 3% segment.
JJJJound's 3% change kind of comes in with their minimal branding and their curation. For example, something small like a tag that says your brand name, or even something small like a Sharpie marker which has black and gray predominantly, or really it's only black and gray, isn't it? Simply print JJJJound in black on the marker. They've changed it maybe even less than 3%. So even though it looks super duper minimal, nonsensical, and almost like they didn't really do anything, they actually did a lot by just deciding what to do, when, and where.
You know the collab I was talking about earlier? Let's talk about it. This year, JJJJound had teamed up with Plasticana to quote-unquote reimagine the brand's popular Gardana clog. This actually marks Plasticana's first ever collaboration, a special moment for the brand. But would you like to see what JJJJound did to reimagine the shoe? They put their logo on the back of the shoe. That's it. With all the deep history behind the shoe and the origins of how founder Andre Ravachol brought the shoe to life, this is disrespectful to the max. This is not 3%. This might actually be negative 3%. It doesn't help that a whole JJJJound team approved this, with the icing on the cake being them bumping up the price for the Plasticana more than half the originals. You know what I recently realized? Some brands start out by just slapping their logo on things to build capital. It's a way to get cash flow going, make ends meet, and buy themselves time until they can fund more original designs. When Virgil Abloh was screen printing Pyrex 23 on dead stock Ralph Lauren flannels and selling them for hundreds of dollars, certain people clowned that era, but really it was a good way to build capital and test ideas. Virgil used that early money, but the hype specifically, to evolve into Off-White and eventually Louis Vuitton, constantly pushing forward incredible products. JJJJound has been a brand for approximately 19 years and has been doing the same thing for that long with no interest in growth, and their team probably doesn't care at all. When they're making millions and millions off of low effort products, there's no way anybody on that team is actually proud of the items they're putting out into the world. Once we hit 2026, it'll mark almost a decade and a half of them doing nearly the exact same thing they did with the Plasticana, replicating it across almost 90% of their products. Take a moment and let that sink in.
Everyone has a brand. Everyone has an Instagram. Go for what sets yours apart. So when someone is looking at it, they're sort of like, oh, I've never seen this. I think it's always important to sort of share it with people. Take hard criticism. Think about what your actual premise is. Think about your photos. Think about, that's your open resume always. Someone is looking at it trying to discover you.
My sandpaper side engraved line into the rust of your tongue. Girl, I could have been someone